Well, hello and welcome. Thank you very much for tuning in. You're watching The Week in Review with myself, Liesl Wilson. Of course, the program where we take a look at some of the top stories making headlines this week, perhaps also looking at what has kept South Africans talking. Let's take a look at some of those headlines. Our former Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene says he has no regrets about appearing before the State Capture Commission. After marathon deliberations with unions, Eskom has made a wage offer to workers. After 2 years of virtual gatherings, Africa's greatest horse racing event takes place in Durban today. All right, those are a look at your headlines. Let's get into some of those stories now. Former Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene says those who are implicated in the state capture final report must be held to account for the alleged corruption they are accused of. Nene was axed in December, where obviously we know in his testimony, Nene indicated his refusal to budge on unaffordable transactions for SAA linked to a contract with Airbus and the establishment of a new route between Johannesburg and Khartoum. This put him in SAA board chair Dudu Mnyani's bad books. Now, he was speaking during the unveiling of the Speaker will deliver the Nelson Mandela annual lecture this year. Nene told SABC News he has no regrets about appearing before the State Capture Commission. The former minister spoke to SABC international news editor Sophie Mukwena.
The most important part of it is to mobilize society to participate in the good cause that Nelson Mandela himself, drove for his entire life. And now living his legacy means that we need to try and walk in his footsteps. And we are now mobilizing society and community, and I would imagine that the foundation has actually done that extremely and exceedingly well.
Are we still emulating former President Mandela?
Look, he remains a constant reminder of where we are supposed to be going. He remains a compass that we should actually look up to, because at the end of the day, and you are correct, we should always do that reality check as to whether indeed we have railed off, but I think there is still hope. Because when you still have the foundation, where you still have people who actually fork out money to support the foundation, where you still have people who partner with the foundation to get things done. We have seen in two instances in KZN during the riots where people have actually had gone off, but the foundation actually took it upon itself to remedy the situation for the victims, and also with the floods. So a lot of that, look at early childhood education that we talk about. It's not early childhood education for the elite we're talking about. As Silo said, it's people that they would find in the middle of nowhere who actually have no access to facilities and be able to deliver that.
You spoke about a critical moment for the country. Can you unpack that for us?
Well, at a critical moment because it's when we actually need to actually reimagine the future. And it is in our hands, as Nelson Mandela had said. And we actually have to roll up our sleeves and do it, because no one is going to do it for us. When I say there's not going to be a Clint Eastwood with a pale horse coming to rescue us to get our house in order, it is our duty to get our house in order.
You went to the state capture. You touched a bit of state capture, even though you didn't delve much into your presentation at the state capture. But the report is out, the final report is out. Do you feel vindicated?
Indeed, to a very great extent, but I really look forward to seeing more revelations also, and that also perpetrators being taken to book.
Where to from here as a country after the state capture in terms of refocusing the country? I mean, right now we have this huge challenge of Eskom.
Look, for the wound to be healed, it needs to be opened. So one, we must be grateful that the wound has been opened, and it is now our duty to sanitize the wound and sterilize the wound, and then not put bandage on the wound also. If it needs surgery and if it needs amputation, that's what needs to be done. And I think we must be brave enough as a country to face up to our challenges, because no one is going to do it for us. And if we don't do it, we owe it to the next generation.
And finally, your party facing challenges. I know you are busy somewhere, but the reality is we know your background.
Well, I think the challenge is also, again, should actually serve as a wake-up call, because this was bound to happen at some point. Because if you behave in a particular way, you do reach a point where the moment where you smell the coffee and deal with it. And I hope that we will emerge stronger from this, and perhaps even if we emerge smaller, but if we emerge stronger, all the better.
Right now, in other news, police have concluded the investigation at the Enyobeni Tavern in Scenery Park in East London, where 21 people died last weekend. The investigating team has withdrawn from the site, but the post-mortem results are yet to be released. The tavern has shut down since the tragedy.
Bottles are scattered across the dirty floor. Many shoes are also lying around, left behind in the chaos of that fateful morning. The smell of stale alcohol hangs in the air. Neighbors want the establishment to be closed permanently.
We have
laid numerous complaints with the owner and even had a meeting with police and CPF. They said they will handle the matter, but nothing changed. We have sleepless nights every weekend.
Meanwhile,
the community of Scenery Park have expressed their dissatisfaction on how police handle criminal cases. They say police responded very late on the day of the incident. They marched to the Scenery Park police station to demand answers about the Enyobeni incident.
This police station, in terms of capacity, is too small. Also, in terms of their vans, each and every day they complain that they don't have cars in this particular police station. So we want the Minister of Police to look further into this issue of this police station, because it's not only operating in Scenery Park only, but other areas that are surrounding Scenery Park.
Preparations for the mass funeral on Wednesday are underway.
Choice of the venue is the will of the community, and our side from a municipal point of view as well as the provincial government is to make sure that we are delivering an event that is dignified as well as that is very safe for Wednesday.
The service will be conducted in a tent that will be erected in an open field in Scenery Park. Lubabalo Tata, SABC News, East London.
Well, more than 250 people have been left homeless after a fire spread through an informal settlement in Grabo in the Overberg. The fire broke out at the Aldrin fruit juices factory, spread to the adjacent Gaffley's transport services, and then jumped across the road to the Waterworks informal settlement. Intensive damage was caused to the factory. Atule Joga has more.
Lendlu umlilo uqale efruit juice apho usuke khona ubangaba wewuze kanjani ne apha ndithe ndifika mina bendingekho bendiseKapa emntaneni esibhedlela xa ndifikayo ndafika sekusitsha izinto seziwe phansi singasakwazi kwa ukhupha kwanto khange ndikhuphe kwanto nabanye omeza bamkhange bakhuphe akho kwanto esizikhuphileyo into esiye saba nomnqa ngayo yokokuba uceba khange simbone kuyinto yonke yeyenzeka akhange simbone uceba umuntu osiye sambona ku-ward committee uceba yena khange simbone siye saliba nomnqa kuba inoba uyena uphi kule ntlekele yenzekileyo ingaka.
Griselda, one of the residents, just explaining that she lost everything in that fire. And also, uye wathini ke mama, uye walala phi ke ngokizolo emveni koba uphulekene nento yonke.
Ulala kwam ndiye ndacela kumntu ondicele kuye indawo yolala. Ndilele khona ke nabantwana bam kuba ndinabantwana abaninzi nefamily yam siye sayolala kuloo ndawo besileli nje ke kuba ke anangubo nantoni siye salala qha sabole kwingubo abanye balele bengumbathanga.
Mhlambe ubawela uncedo lunjani?
ndicela yonke into endinothi ndincedwe ngayo, into ezinjengo ngendlu yam ndikwazi uba ndihlale kuyo, nezinto kokuba sincedakale kuba asincedakali apha egrapho, sincedakale into nangezindlu kanje, ukwenzela into kokuba sizokwazi uba sikhuseleke, kuba ngoku asikhuselekanga ngoku xa sihlala kula matyotyombe, nanini na singafela kula matyotyombe.
Okay, thank you, Skukuno. Griselda, that was one of the residents just explaining the living conditions here, saying they are asking for and appealing for better services, saying the informal structures that they are living in are hazardous and could cause any harm at any moment. And also explaining that she lost everything in that fire that erupted here yesterday. She could not salvage any of her items, and she had to go and ask for a place to sleep from some of their friends, and also explaining that she has a lot of kids, so some of them had to sleep without even have blankets over their heads. But as we try to get to the bottom of this, I'll also try and speak to some of the ward committee members, the committee leaders here.
Okay, as inkokheli zasekuhlaleni sa-engage umasipala uzamile ukunceda ngoko anakho ingubo, ukutya, nendawo zolala kwabo bafuna ukunceda indawo zolala.
So abantu banazi indawo zolala because besithetha nomama ngokisithi yena uyolala kubahlobo.
Ya ikhona indawo kuthiwa yi-soul food, kuthiwe kwathiwa abantu mabamuvele kuyo abafunayo ukukuya, so abanye bafuna bayolala khona apho kulo soul food.
Mhlawumbi ithini isisombululo sale nto?
Isisombululo sale nto kuba abantu bafuna uncedo, ukutya, ii-blankets okwangoku. Izindlu ziyeza zona zalandela izindlu eziba yapromisile umasipala ngazo.
Okay. Griselda, one of the community ward leaders, just talking to us about some of the plans to try and rescue people and help them, saying of course they've been in engagements with the municipality to try and help people with food items and also blankets and a shelter at a certain hall. But I will bring in the mayor as well to try and talk to us. Mayor was speaking to Mama, one of the residents here, saying she has a lot of children and she was living in this informal structure. She had to go and ask for help from some of the family members or family friends. Just talk to us about the devastation of this fire and how are you looking to help people around here?
Yeah, it was very, very devastating when we were on the ground from yesterday, and I used my executive powers to call upon the JOC, the Joint Operation Committee, to sit down and deal with this issue. We assist the people and make places available for them to sleep, but unfortunately, as we know, people rather go to families for assistance, and from last night until now, we are preparing starter kits to bring to the people and food to bring for the people. There was an outcry from the community also to assist the people, and I appreciate it very much.
According to your registers, how many people are affected now? And
around about 66 households places were burned down like this. So that is our first priority, to assist our people that they can build their houses again.
Do we know the cause of the fire, how it broke out at the stage?
I don't want to speculate, but there will be a police report coming out, and then we will deal with it when we get the report.
But maybe for now, any preliminary reports and on the status of the damage from the factory to the transport service department there and also here?
Unfortunately, I haven't got that information now.
And also, what is the long-term plan now for the residents going forward? What are they going to do?
You know, this is a housing project. This is the first informal settlement in Grabo. And we as the new coalition government, this is one of our priorities to have a success with this housing project. We are sitting down and plan how we can change this to a formal housing project.
So for now, what is the plan for now?
No, for now we just had to assist them and that they can build their houses again, and then we will see how we can assist them further on also.
That is like informal structures or temporary structures?
Yeah, it's informal structures. To give them the starter kits. We pull out the starter kits from all the other towns to come and assist with these people, to give them the starter kits.
For the benefit of those who do not know the starter kits, can you elaborate on that?
The starter kits is 6 zincs and 6 poles, and then that other poles also to assist. But it's not a full house. So we also had to go and look in our yards for extra zinc and see how we can assist them. We will actually use our trucks to assist them to clean up. The digger will come in just now to start to assist them to clean up. But we will, I can promise the people, we will see that they are comfortable where they are currently when we are finished with them.
When are we planning to do this time frame?
This week we will, you know, people like now, they start to build their houses, and we have to assist what they need from now on till they are finished. Time frame, around about a week, everything will be restored. Tomorrow the power will come in as soon as the structures are finished. We already engaged with Eskom. This is an Eskom area.
Well, that was Atule Joga talking to us about the 250 plus people who have been left homeless after a fire spread to an informal settlement in Grabo. Let's take a look at one of our earlier stories. Obviously, Buffalo City Municipality spokesperson Sam Ngwenya says that preparations are underway for the mass funeral on Wednesday. This is next week for the 21 teenagers who died in the Enyobeni Tavern tragedy in Scenery Park in East London. The service will be conducted from a tent that will be erected in an open field in Scenery Park. Ngwenya says that the municipality is working with various stakeholders to give the victims a dignified funeral. Our reporter, Lubabalo Dada, is live in East London for the latest. A very good afternoon to you, Lubabalo. Thanks for joining us. Perhaps you can walk us through how government, has been engaging with the survivors of the tragedy to date.
Thank you very much. Could you please repeat the question for me? There's a bit of a wind, so I was struggling to hear.
Sure, Lubaba. Well, we're obviously looking at the incident that transpired where 21, teenagers passed away. And I wonder, as we look at those who survived the tragedy, how has government been engaging with these survivors of the tragedy to date?
All right. There have been counseling process that has been taking place since Monday. Your psychologists and social workers have been visiting homes of the deceased, talking to family members of the affected, as well as conducting group counseling for the survivors. So that process began on Monday, and it is set to continue until the day of the funeral. But it will depend, it's quite a long process because the healing doesn't just happen within just a few days. Even beyond the funeral, I'm told that the counseling will continue depending on how the survivors and the families of the victims are being responding to that.
Oh, absolutely. And when we look at, the bodies and perhaps the identification of the bodies, have all the bodies been identified? On Thursday, it was announced that there was at least one other body that had not yet been identified out of the 21 young people who died. What's the latest emerging there?
Well, all the bodies have been identified. We're informed, I think, by Thursday evening that the last body that was remaining was identified by the family members. So everything is in order now. It's the preparation for the funeral that is now happening. I've been to the field where the funeral service will take place. It's busy there. So they will be erecting a tent, making sure that all the people that want to attend are sorted.
Lubabalo, on our screens, we can see some of the images emerging from the tavern. The media was allowed to enter the tavern on Thursday after permission was granted by the owner. And because you are there, could you walk us through what some of the things are that you uncovered on the scene? I mean, alcohol was also removed from the premise under police guard, I believe.
Well, the police have concluded their investigation here at the scene. So the building was handed over to the owner, and we were allowed for a couple of minutes just to take visuals. So upon our arrival here, we found that there were a couple of items that were lying around. For instance, your sneakers, handbags, as well as the other items such as your empty bottles of alcohol. Some of them are half empty. So it was like that when we came inside here.
All right, Lubabalo, thank you very much for that update. You know, we're still looking at the speculations circulating regarding the cause of death and whether the cause of death is still something that is under investigation. Perhaps you could just clarify for us what exactly, has been announced on that front. And in terms of in terms of liability, what are the chances of the owner now being held entirely responsible and liable for this tragedy?
Well, there have been speculations on the different platforms of the media with regards to the cause of death. But the police have said to us that anything that has not been confirmed then should not be regarded as the main cause of death, as the police are still investigating. You remember that they were here up until day before yesterday, so they only concluded their investigation here at the scene on Thursday. So whatever is out there is not authentic according to the police. So they have requested that they would be allowed time, sufficient time to conduct their investigation, so that they do a thorough investigation that will give answers to the questions that the public have been asking. And also with regards to the question of the accountability, the owner of the place now, there have been charges that have been laid by the Eastern Cape Liquor Board regarding the sale of alcohol to the minors. So we are expecting that process now to unfold, wherein maybe the police will continue with the investigation regarding that charge.
All right, thank you very much for that update. Lubabalo Dada, reporter in East London, just giving us the latest after police have wrapped up their probe into the Enyobeni Tavern tragedy. Again on Wednesday, 21 teenagers will be buried, and we'll bring it to you right here on the SABC. Let's leave it there, take a quick ad break and continue with more news making headlines this week. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Week in Review with myself, Hazel Wilson, continues. In other news now, unions representing striking Eskom workers say the power utility has presented an offer which they're taking to their members. The deadlock in wage talks has seen over a week of illegal strike action by Eskom workers and the implementation of Stage 6 rolling blackouts. Eskom reduced rolling blackouts to Stage 2 last night, but it moved back to Stage 4 from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. and the same will apply tomorrow.
In its latest statement, Eskom says the small reprieve is due to anticipated lower demand during the weekend. It says it currently has 3,104 megawatts on planned maintenance, while another 17,431 megawatts of capacity is unavailable due to breakdowns. NUM and NUMSA, unions representing striking workers at Eskom, say the employer has put a revised offer on the table which they are taking to their members.
Let me confirm that we, as Labour, we met with Eskom. Eskom has presented an offer, but on the offer that Eskom has presented, there are 5 items. In principle, there are 2 areas that we think that we are moving along, and there are 3 areas that Eskom is taking a caucus so that they can respond to us.
The 2 burning issues that must be resolved in this round of wage talks is firstly the across-the-board wage increase that members are making. That's the first thing. The second thing that must be addressed in the proposal is this issue of the conditions of service, which has really become a burning issue for workers at Eskom, especially field workers who are working near the power station plants.
Eskom CEO confirmed that he had personally briefed President Cyril Ramaphosa on an ongoing electricity crisis, but he was thin on details.
I was involved in a meeting, 2 meetings as a matter of fact, with the President in the company of Minister Pravin Gordhan. We fully briefed the President on the situation. He is seized with the matter. We discussed a number of potential options. I'm not at liberty to disclose the nature or the content of these discussions. I will leave that to the President and the Minister to announce.
Asked if he has any response to renewed calls for him to step down as Eskom CEO, this is what the Director had to say.
My answer is no.
Diabo Seto, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, for the latest on the Eskom wage talks, we're joined by NUM spokesperson Libuwani Mamburu. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the SABC. We understand that Eskom has offered your members a 7% salary increase. And I wonder if this is what you were looking for. Are you excited that it is above the inflation rate?
It's not really what we were looking for, but it's an offer that we can take to our members. It's not only 7% that they've offered. There are other demands that they've put on the table, like the conditions of services, which was a deal breaker. Our members gave us a mandate that if we don't get anything from this demand, they are not going to sign an agreement. We are happy that Eskom, they have reversed their decision to unilaterally change the conditions of services. So, like I said, this was a deal breaker. So the third issue is the issue of housing allowance. Eskom has given us a 400 housing allowance. So we are taking this offer to our members. But the other issue that was a key demand for our members is the issue of income differentials, which is called the apartheid wage gap. You still find a situation at the power utility where white workers are still earning more money than black workers, even though they do the same kind of a job. But irrespective of that, we are taking the current offer to our members. We have started consulting with them since last night. And this coming Tuesday, on the 5th of July, we are going to have a joint shop steward council with NUMSA at Cedar Woods. And thereafter, around 2 o'clock, we will go and report back the mandate from our members at the Central Bargaining Forum.
All right, thank you very much for that update. You've spoken about the demands and some of the deal breakers, and perhaps also now going back to your members and then obviously getting a response and relaying that to the public at large. I wonder if we look at some of the other conditions of employment that you were concerned about to date. Has anything changed? Is it likely to at this point?
Yeah, like I said to you, that the main issue was the issue of conditions of services. That was unilaterally changed by Eskom. This was a deal breaker. Our members were extremely worried by it. Like I said, our members are happy that Eskom has reversed the decision and they have reinstated the conditions of services. They refused to our demand of income differentials. We also wanted a sweetener or an ex gratia payment of 10,000 to every worker, but they also refused that demand.
Libuwani, early in the week you raised concerns about a statement made by Minister Pravin Gordhan. And I wonder what your reservations were regarding that. Could you contextualize and also give us your response in terms of, being blamed for some of the delays, amongst others?
Yeah, we were very concerned about the statement that he made. Firstly, he made a statement that we had agreed with Eskom with the offer that was tabled, but that was not revealed to the public. We feel that that was reckless, and he kept on making reckless statements again yesterday while we were negotiating. He was saying that the wage negotiations were constructive. Early in the morning, when the wage negotiations were extremely tense, things started to go well around after lunch. When we came back from lunch, that is when negotiations started to go well. But we were very disturbed by his reckless statements in the media, and they were jeopardizing the wage negotiation. With the issue of load shedding, or that workers are responsible for stage 6 of load shedding. No, we don't agree with that. As you speak right now, if you look at Komati power stations, there are 8 units that have been shut down by Eskom out of 9, and it led to 1,200 megawatts being lost out of the grid. Then you go to Hendrina power station, where Eskom has shut down 2 units. That amounts to 480 megawatts. That is a cause of concern. If you put together the units that have been closed at Komati Power Station and Hendrina Power Stations, it amounts to 2,000 megawatts that have been lost out of grid. Again, you go to Grootvlei Power Station in Balfour in Mpumalanga, where Eskom has shut down 3 units, but they refurbished them, but they have not put them back to the grid. And you don't understand why they have not put them back to the grid, because those units are now working, and they've spent millions of rands refurbishing them. But the narrative that is being put on public is to blame workers, which we do not agree with it at all.
Ibwani, what economic reforms, in your opinion, is needed to soldier ahead, perhaps to make it a more inclusive society? You spoke about, one of your non-negotiables was, bridging that inequality gap amongst workers in terms of pay and race relations. How does government, labor and civil society begin to come together and foster a new path forward as we reimagine what the South African Inc. is going to look like going ahead?
The sad situation with employers in South Africa, including Eskom, they keep on having this hostile relationship with workers, and they undermine and disrespect workers. I mean, with the issue of income differentials or apartheid wage gap, we have raised this issue with Eskom since 8 years ago. 8 years ago. Since today, they have not addressed it. And it's a serious cause of concern that even now, before I came for this interview, our members wanted to know if this demand of apartheid wage gap have been addressed by Eskom. They are worried because you do the same kind of a job with your colleague, but that colleague earns more money than you. And then that is causing serious anger. So the issue, we feel as the NEM that employers must start respecting and stop undermining workers if they want to address a lot of crises that are happening in this country, because employees or workers feel undermined by some of the decisions that are taken by Eskom. I mean, I'll give you an example of the narrative that was being conveyed to the public by Eskom of blaming workers that they are responsible for stage 6 of load shedding, but whereas workers are not, whereas the public is not being told the truth of some of the units that are being shut down in power stations like Komati, Hendrina, and Grootvlei. That is an issue. The narrative was only to blame workers, but the management, they are not looking at some of the decisions that they are wrong decisions that they are taking.
All right, thank you very much, Libuwani Mamburu, for that update. Again, giving an NUM spokesperson, giving us the latest on the Eskom wage talks. The labour unions will be taking the offer by Eskom, currently at 7% salary increase, amongst other demands, including conditions of services, deal breakers like housing allowance, and addressing the issue of apartheid wage gap that has been a long-standing issue. Libuwani is saying that it's been 8 years in the making. Thank you very much to Libuwani for that update again. We will take a look at more on this story with economist Dr. Iraj Abedian. All right. Right, for more on this, we are now joined by economist and chief executive at Pan-African Capital Holdings, Dr. Iraj Abedian. A very good afternoon to you, Dr. Iraj. Thank you for joining us here on the SABC.
Thank you, Lizelle. Thank you for inviting me.
So we've obviously looked at, we've heard from the NUM union, the spokesperson giving us an update on the strike saga. And I wonder if you can quantify the costs of load shedding on the economy on both the micro and macro level to date.
I think at macro level, the first point to highlight is the fact that load shedding is not new. It's 14 years. If a government or a nation cannot sort out a problem for over a decade, it's a major problem. It's a major confidence problem. It's a major announcement about the incompetence or lack of political commitment to do the proper things. Over the past 14 years, China has made double the entire capacity of South Africa's generation in new generation. Many other countries have done the same. So that's the macro impact. It has brought us from a growth of over 4% to the current growth of hardly around 1.5%. We were an investment grade nation. Now we are sub-investment or junk status as commonly known. And of course, unemployment rising, tax revenues falling. So those are the macro consequences. The micro consequences are as important. And that really links to the macro. The nation has lost its confidence, to some degree, its cohesion, and its trust in leadership. People feel vulnerable. Human beings generally are not made for darkness. They are scared of darkness. It cuts them, it catches them in their guts when suddenly in the middle of the night, electricity goes, it's dark, they feel vulnerable, they cannot protect themselves, they cannot even warm up a cup of tea, so to speak. So those are some of the micro issues. People feel very, very angry because year after year, ministers come, ministers go, CEOs come, CEOs go, presidents come, presidents go. The problem gets worse, not better. And that loss of trust in your leadership, loss of trust and confidence in your nation, in your economy, is the micro level psychological pressures that people feel. And that leads to other issues. It increases crime. It increases tensions. People fight over everything. And all of those micros amounts to suffering of the nation, especially the poorer people, especially the working class. And that's at a micro level we can explore. We can literally go on and on, but it is something far more than whether the lights are on or off.
Absolutely. You mentioned how it's always the poor and the most vulnerable who suffer from, these poor decisions or lack thereof. And I wonder, with the ongoing strike and wage disputes, perhaps also failing to resolve the issues at the power utility for well over a decade now, in your opinion, has there been enough political will to resolve this, given the vested interests and outcomes at large?
To be honest, Lizzo, the answer is a big no. Never mind political will. There's been political confusion, political misunderstanding, and poor decision. When the unions go on a strike, it's the management's fault. It's a strategic failure of those in charge. Unions don't like to go on a strike because they lose. They don't have much to begin with, and they have to lose a bit more. So that's their last resort. When governments fail to address issues in a proactive way, in a structured, rational, and effective manner, they successively lead the situation from bad to worse, from worse even more, etc., etc. And ultimately, the workers have no choice but to make their point, because all along, inflation goes up, cost of living goes up, and workers feeling the pinch. Just because somebody has stolen with the help of political leaders, just because as we speak, the supply of coal into Eskom is not legitimate. It's not properly priced. It is extractive. It's putting the Eskom under incredible pressure. The fact that a couple of weeks back, 1.5 billion of Eskom's reserves were stolen in daylight. Where is government? Where is strategic protection of these strategic assets, national key points. And yet nobody takes responsibility. Workers feel vulnerable. And yet when they want 5% or 10% increase, political leadership says, no, we haven't got money. And so on and so forth. So strike is not, should not be seen as workers causing problem. It symbolizes that management has failed and our political strategic direction has not taken the right decision at the right time 5-10 years ago to make sure that workers don't end up so vulnerable.
So then with that said, Dr. Iraj, what has been the impact of this on the investment of SA Inc. at large? In the same breath, what economic reforms is going to be needed to soldier ahead to make it more inclusive? I did ask Libuwani this question as well. We need to look at addressing, triple threats of poverty, inequality, unemployment, also looking at how government, labor and society, civil society comes together to navigate and charter these new waters ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the first part of your question, Lisa, what's happened to investment is only gone one way. If growth goes down, you don't have to be an economist, you don't have to be a statistician. If growth has gone down, it means investment has gone down. And as we speak, there is an outflow of capital in the bond market. And how do we see it? Look at the exchange rate. Exchange rate today is 16.50. 6 weeks ago, people were hoping it will go below 15 now. So that is a real terms cut into people's spending power. Everything gets more expensive. So, and running a business becomes more expensive. How do you run a business? And why do you want to invest where not only you don't know whether electricity will be there or not in the next 5 years, every day you get cut off 2, 3, 4, sometimes up to 6 hours. Now, that means a loss on your investments, and nobody, local or international, wants to invest. So that's a problem that we knew 14 years ago, and yes, we're still talking about it. So investment has gone down, and the mood in the investment community is very negative because it's just physically impossible to run a business and be competitive when your energy cuts off 3, 4, 5 hours a day. That's a big issue. And for job creation, then eventually becomes a problem. The triple problems of inequality gets worse, unemployment rises, poverty deepens, and one gets into a vicious circle of poor decision, poor socioeconomic and political outcomes.
Dr. Iraj, just very quickly, in the interest of time, perhaps as we wrap up the conversation, the July unrest is almost a year later, and given South Africa's current state, very briefly, are there worrying signs perpetrators have still not yet been brought to book?
Yeah, and that basically says one of two things. Either our security officers, law enforcement agencies are totally incompetent, that they cannot control it, or they are competent, but the political bosses prevents them from bringing those perpetrators into books. Both of them are bad news for the country. And it's really one gets in a situation that one can get very depressed by very obvious things that political leadership should see, because if we don't make those decisions now, Liesl, in 5 to 10 years' time, whoever has this conversation would say, but it's taken 10 years to deal with this, why not? And that takes us to another lower level of growth, higher level of poverty. So we need to unlock the capacity of the economy, capacity of the society by doing the right thing, putting competent people in charge and following the rule of law.
Dr. Iraj Abedian, thank you very much for your time here on the SABC. Economist and Chief Executive of Pan-African Capital Holdings, Dr. Iraj Abedian, chatting about this week's economic matters. This as the country experienced blackouts due to load shedding, obviously having reached stage 6. Also looking at the impact this has had on South Africa at large, consumers and businesses rather. Again, a situation we'll continue to monitor as it unfolds, given the ongoing wage disputes currently underway. In other news now, Reverend Frank Chikane says Parliament has failed the people of South Africa. Chikane says if it didn't, state-owned entities like Eskom and SAA would be thriving. The Reverend says South Africans need to reclaim the democracy they fought for, which has been marred by corruption and maladministration.
Yesterday, we opened the conference where different speakers making their inputs. The conference then went into commissions, and now we are getting the reports from the commissions. But let me just say very clearly, the people of South Africa are fed up about what has been happening in this country. They are determined to make sure that no politician takes them for granted, nobody undermines our intelligence. We're going to renew the system and change it. And we're going to make sure that there's new politics in our country where the people who are elected represent the people rather than represent themselves and exploit the system and enrich themselves. That's what, because it destroys the country. Look at SAA, it collapsed. You know, they still to a level where they kill you. And they're going to kill the country, and we're not going to allow that. And those who actually are trying to imagine we don't know and try to manipulate the people are making a big mistake. It's not going to happen. So this conference is going to come out with a declaration that's going to indicate clear action points that the people of South Africa together are going to follow to stop this rot. By 2024, we want to make sure that we get the leaders who are going to be leaders of the people rather than thieves and thugs.
Certainly. So one of the questions that has come up is, whether Save Our Democracy has any political ambitions or any interest in terms of, entering the political arena. Is this part of any plans?
We are talking about a broad front, or what people would call a social movement of all the people of South Africa to resist this rot. It doesn't matter what political party goes in power, but that political party must elect people who are respected by the people, who are not going to be corrupt, and who are going to make sure they represent the people and make sure the pain of the poor is dealt with, which is really the critical issue. And so ours is to mobilize the country. You'll remember when we started to defend our democracy, I said the people are the last line of defense. It's not the parties, it's the people. And that's the people we are mobilizing.
Okay. Now, as some criticisms could come in the way of, by way of that some of the people who are involved and some of the officials involved, such as yourself, sir, did serve under the current administration, And some might ask, when did you start realizing that, democracy needed to be saved? And when did the rot that we have seen contribute to the decay in terms of state-owned enterprises and so on start? And what was done, by those who were within the government at the time to try and stop it?
But that's now history. You know. The state capture is what started this, intensified our level of crisis. I mean, before 2008, 2009, the SAA had challenges, but it was not captured in a way that people really steal billions from it to collapse it. Look at Eskom now. I mean, we had darkness yesterday during our conference because people are looting and don't want to allow any change. Now, I just want to say this is history now because, when we realized that these comrades were going to destroy the country, we took a stand in 2015. The masses of the people took to the streets. The veterans of the African National Congress itself took a stand and said this must end. And that led to 2017, when Nasrec happened. The change was not drastic enough to actually save our country. And it has been a struggle since then up to now. So that struggle is not over. That's why we are here. Because state capture is still continuing in other elements of the state, and we have to stop it.
Well, in other news, the 126th edition of the Hollywood Bets Durban July has created a buzz in racing, in fashion and social circles, where Africa's greatest horse racing event prepares to celebrate its return to racing in front of packed stands and marquees at Hollywood Bets Greyville Racecourse today. After 2 years of the iconic horse race being behind closed doors, the recent lifting of pandemic regulations has thrown the door open for racing fans, fashion lovers and socialites to return to the popular mid-winter South African sporting occasion. Perhaps for more on this story, we will be crossing to our reporter Mlondi Khadebe. A very good afternoon to you, Mlondi. Thanks for joining us. Walk us through the theme of this year's Durban July, and also I believe you're standing in an area where the designers are showcasing some of their greatest works to date. What is on the agenda? Mlondi, if you can hear me, we can see you, and obviously you're stationed where it looks like there's a hive of activity from the designers showcasing some of their greatest works. Could you walk us through what you're witnessing, perhaps also the theme of this year?
I think it's sound.
Mlondi, if you can hear me, you're welcome to.
We're still here in the Durban July at Tegwini. Today, we will remember that the Durban July is one of the events that is biggest in the Southern Hemisphere. During this time, the KwaZulu-Natal government and also the people of KwaZulu-Natal are enjoying themselves during this time. And next to me is Martin Steenkamp, who's the upcoming designer who won in this design today. Martin, thank you very much for your time. Briefly about your design and what motivated you to do this kind of a design.
Okay, so as we all know that the theme this year is Show Me the Honey, and I was inspired by the idea of a beehive, and as we know, every beehive has a queen, and I wanted to capture the essence of the queen in her beehive, and I wanted to create a garment that was sculptural and that showed the architecture and the shape of a beehive.
We know that it's been 2 years without Durban July coming to the race course. It was virtually in the past 2 years. Did you participate, and how was your feeling in relation to that?
Well, I did participate, and I must say that the feeling was worlds apart, because obviously there wasn't as much social engagement as where is now. It's more social. There's a lot of engagement. You get to see the excitement and you get to see the enthusiasm of the people around the Durban July. But you also get to see how people respond to your work, most importantly. Whereas opposed to with the virtual shows, we couldn't really see how people really responded to your work. So it's really exciting to have this platform back again.
Winning this year, what does that mean to you?
Oh my word, I'm excited. It's thrilling. I think for an emerging designer and for any young emerging designer, it's nice to see that your work is being recognized, and it's also nice to see that innovation and, exciting ideas are being celebrated. So it's very exciting.
Can you just take us through your design, and then I will ask Faso just to show the viewers at home the design that we are talking about. What motivated the hairstyle, and then also the part of the dress?
Awesome. So from the look, from the top to the bottom, what you see is you see the beehive at the top, and I want to create something that was modern and not something that's very literal, but something that was very mystical and very dreamy. As you can see with the architecture of the actual coat itself, I wanted to sculpt the actual beehive, and I wanted to also, with the color story, capture the beautiful, elegant, golden, syrupy feel of the honey, and therefore I came up with this look.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Basically, coming to you, being part of this design, what does it make you feel?
Well, as Martin said, the concept behind his design is that every hive has a queen bee, and I certainly feel like a queen today. It's phenomenal to be a part of this experience.
Coming back to the race course, how are you feeling? We're no longer wearing masks. The regulations have been basically banned.
I actually couldn't be more excited. It's just so nice to interact with people again and to get back to some sort of normalcy again after being with COVID for so long and not being able to interact with people.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. That was the designer Martin Steenkamp as well as the model. Basically, they are telling us that they are very happy to be part of this year's event of Durban July. Basically, the theme, they nailed it because they they managed to win this year's design of the year from the upcoming designers. Back to you in studio.
Mlondi Khadebe, thank you very much for giving us that update. Again, Mlondi Khadebe is out at the Greyville Racecourse. This is where the Hollywood Bets Durban July is taking place. Of course, we've seen racing, fashion, and social circles merging. Again, Mlondi Khadebe speaking to the winner of the Emerging Designers category, Martin Steenkamp, who has successfully showcased and epitomized what the theme of Show Me the Honey looks like. That's where we're going to leave it for you today. Again, also wishing the Springboks all the best as they take Wales a little later on. But from myself, Liesl Wilson, and the rest of the team, until tomorrow for a look at the week ahead, it is goodbye for now.